I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Michael Hocker, Dean of the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley School of Medicine and Senior Vice President of UT-RGV. Dr. Hocker assumed his position at UT-RGV School of Medicine on June 28, 2021. Comes to the Rio Grande Valley from the Medical College of Georgia at Augusta University, where he served as the Senior Associate Dean and Designated Institutional Officer of Graduate Medical Education. UTRGV and the School of Medicine are having a significant impact on the region. The goal is to develop students, residents, and scientists into the future, improving the healthcare of the Rio Grande Valley and beyond. That really doesn't, it's a great script myself, but it doesn't say how significant this is. Last year, Dr. Bailey told us how amazing UTRGV is and its impact. And then most of us have probably heard athletic director and Coach Bush talk about, Chase and Coach Bush talk about what's happening with our UTRGV sports. But I think it's kind of behind the scenes, the amazing things that are happening at the medical school. And it's one of my great professional honors. The dean asked me to serve on a citizens advisory committee, and I thought, well, I don't know if he's as smart as he thinks he is because I know nothing about medicine as a real estate lawyer, but that's one of the most thrilling committees to be on because of the people at the table and the ideas and the innovation. I leave there just as thrilled as Mark is now in his role every time I'm around Dean Hocker. So I just want you to, we thought, let's let him share the story with you guys, and it's just remarkable. Dean? Yes, sir.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Edwards family. Mark, congratulations. Byron, I don't know where you went to, but it's a real privilege and honor to stand up in front of you today. I usually get advice, not from somebody like you, Dr. Jones, and by the way, I spent some time in Durango, Colorado, and if you haven't been to Ouray, Colorado, or ridden the train from Durango to Silverton, and then you got to go over another pass, you should do that once in your life. It's one of the most beautiful places in the United States. But as I was taking my son to school, I usually get my advice from my 15-year-old son some days, and you know, he said, what's your day look like today, Dad? But that was right after I berated him for not having his assignments due just before spring break, and if he doesn't get them in, he's going to have some troubles in his grades. And he said, what are you doing today? And I said, you know, I'm going to speak to a bunch of realtors and attorneys and things. And he said, why? You don't know anything about that. And I said, you're right. So what should I tell him? And he said, tell him what you do every day. What you don't know is my son usually tells me I'm an emergency physician by training. And, you know, most of his life, when I went to work, it was actually in the emergency room, especially through COVID. And so he gets to see the world in a different view. But he did stop this morning and he said, tell him how great the students at UTRGV are and what they do for us. And you don't know this, but he goes to the health professions in Harlingen, just a phenomenal school. And actually on Monday, many of our medical students and some of our faculty were there teaching them how to suture. And that just warms my heart because my son got to do that. And he has no interest in medicine. So why does he go to a health profession school? That's what I should ask him. My hopes are that someday he'll become a physician. It really is important what I share our story in our School of Medicine. So in the 1940s, legislation actually looked at forming a medical school in the Rio Grande Valley, but it didn't happen. It wasn't until the late 1990s that the legislation actually passed the bill to start the medical school here. I think that somewhat parallels the history of the Rio Grande Valley. And when you look at, often it was long neglected, lack of physicians, lack of specialty care, a lack of opportunities. And again, if you were somebody who wanted to go to medical school in the Rio Grande Valley, if you were a bright student, you left the Rio Grande Valley. You had to go somewhere else to go to medical school. You went to medical school, then you went to a residency program, and we'll talk more about that today. And then you never came back. So Mark, thanks for coming back. I have so many physicians that every day I just thank them for coming back to the Rio Grande Valley and giving back. Today, I'll take you through a little bit of a tour of what we do at the UTRGV School of Medicine, but one of the best things I can do is show you a video.
In the blossoming region of the Rio Grande Valley, community means everything. That's why serving our community is our mission. At the UTRGV School of Medicine, we're providing an underserved area with access to better health and education for this generation and the next.
You're there. It's with the patients, one-on-one. You're actively trying to figure out how can I help them. And that really puts it all together. It kind of ignites the passion that you originally had when you started this journey, and you remember why you're doing it. You remember that it's for the patients and it's centered towards helping someone. It's one of the most beautiful and special things about this school. It's that little thing that you need to keep reminding you why you do the hours of studying that you do. And the school does a really good job at exposing us to those kinds of opportunities.
From the white coat ceremony to match day, our students celebrate key moments throughout their journey, empowering them as they continue their medical education.
For way too long, students in the Rio Grande Valley who wanted to become doctors unfortunately had to leave home to pursue that dream. However, in 2015, that all changed with the creation of the UTRGV School of Medicine. Since then, we've become a great choice for aspiring physicians here in South Texas, training over 200 medical students, many from the Rio Grande Valley itself. At the UTRGV School of Medicine, we are deeply committed to improving local access to high-quality health care, also bringing new primary and specialty care physicians who are practicing through our clinical arm, UT-RGV. We're proud to also sponsor several residency and fellowship training programs right here in the Rio Grande Valley. This allows our students to train locally, addressing the regional and statewide shortages of healthcare providers. In fact, since our inception, more than 500 medical students and residents have graduated through our programs, with many choosing to stay and serve our community. Our most recent residency collaboration with the local health system and the upcoming UT-RGV Cancer and Surgery Center, set to open in 2025, will further expand healthcare opportunities in the region. At the UTRGV School of Medicine and UT-RGV, we're not just educating doctors, we're transforming healthcare right here in the Rio Grande Valley.
For our community, we're providing specialized services like diagnostic imaging, surgery, and cancer care, so patients don't have to travel far for treatment. We're conducting life-saving research on diseases such as Alzheimer's and diabetes, which are prevalent in our region. We've established UT Health RGV clinics valley-wide and schedule a mobile health care unit to serve families in need. Now everyone can experience world-class care close to home.
I think if you look historically across the United States and other communities that built a medical school and built an academic medical complex, you will see that that medical school and that academic medical complex transformed the region. Economically, educationally, clinically, and from a research standpoint. So I think that the School of Medicine is going to transform the Valley.
We're more than a medical school. Together, we're building a healthier, brighter future for the Rio Grande Valley.
The gentleman you just saw there, Dr. Everardo Cobos, he actually looked at a job about 15 years ago, but he said there's no academic institution here. I need to be at an academic place where I can teach students, where I can do research, do clinical care. He ended up at Texas Tech El Paso, and then when we announced just over about 2 years ago that we were going to build a cancer center, he reached out and said, can I come be part of that? He's from the border, he knows what the border needs, and now he's here in the Rio Grande Valley. I can't talk about our School of Medicine without talking about UTRGV. I have one of the best presidents, if not the best president in the United States to work for. And what he's done is just, it's unbelievable, to be honest with you. When I first was looking at the job, I remember thinking, whose bright idea was it to take two legacy institutions, bring them together, start a medical school all during COVID? but it's happened, and it's working. I'm not from this state, so I hope I don't offend anybody, but when you talk about who's the #1 university in Texas, and there's a lot of great schools, but when you look at the measures of what UTRGV is doing, social mobility, student debt, the number of students getting educated, what we're doing here is truly transformational. Last year, we eclipsed over 50,000 graduates since the inception of UTRGV. Think about that. For a population of 1.5 million, that's about 5%. Nowhere else in the country do you find that. I remember Dr. Bailey talking about, if you take UTRGV out of this community, if you take the School of Medicine out of this community, it won't be what it needs to be in the next 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years. Next slide. When you look at the economic impact, I just had to throw something in there. Healthcare drives a lot of economy. It's an important commodity for you all and the people you're selling your homes to, but us as families that live in these communities. When you look at just the School of Medicine that's about to approach its 10th anniversary, we now employ over 1,000 individuals that weren't employed 10 years ago. Our economic impact is approaching $1 billion, and in the next 10 years, we'll probably double that. We are important to you, you're important to us. When I recruit physicians here, how many people have to do recruitment to the Rio Grande Valley from out of the valley? I know there's several of you. It's hard. My conversation always starts the same way. I'm at UTRGV. UT what? Then it's like Rio Grande Valley, tell me a city there. So then I usually start naming the cities. I usually get to the island and then somebody says, oh yeah, okay, I know where that is. And then the next question, which is frankly something that we collectively as a community have to overcome, is then I get, oh, you live on the border, it must be so safe, or it must not be safe there. Did you really move your family there? Oh my God, tell me about what's going on. And then I say, obviously depending on what news channel you watch, you're biased by that. I said it's one of the most safest places in the country. It's a tropical paradise. Yes, it gets really hot in the summer, but it's a tropical paradise. Once we get them here, usually they're amazed because all they've seen is the news and the issues related to the border, and we have to overcome that. I want to talk about our vision. Vision is something that shouldn't be achievable, but it should. When we look at transforming the healthcare, it's a necessity for the Rio Grande Valley. It's essential to what we are doing here today, which will set the stage for the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years. And we do that through our mission areas. Obviously, we're providing high quality care, and I call it tertiary level care. Our physicians are academic physicians that are on the forefront of the best treatments, the best way to diagnose, and we're doing things that other folks don't do. We also collaborate and look at research and life-changing discoveries, and we'll talk more about research later. But we're here, and everything we're doing is geared on the diseases that are here in the Rio Grande Valley and Texas. We also are obviously teaching medical students and other healthcare students. Right now we have over 4,000 students who are either in some health-related pipeline coming through UTRGV. And as we know, there's a desperate need for almost every health specialist here in the Rio Grande Valley, but also within Texas in the United States. We also have a mission to serve. And I remember when I first got here, people were talking about service to our community. We don't serve our community. We are service within our community, and we have to be here for our community. Next slide. When I look at South Texas, again, it's a region that has long been neglected. These are some of the brutal facts. When you look at the population here, about 30% of it is in poverty. 30% doesn't have health insurance. If you don't have health insurance, you don't get care here, or you're putting up your own money to care for it. We have disease patterns that many in the country just are appalled at. When you look at cervical cancer rates, they're the highest in the country right here in the Rio Grande Valley. Why is that? Women don't have access to care. They don't understand they need to get a pap smear. By the time they get diagnosed, they're so far advanced that there's nothing they can do. They don't have insurance, can't get in to get a pap smear or be seen. As an academic medical school, That is our mission, to change that, and that's something that we strive to do every day. When I look at other disease patterns, other cancers, specifically GI cancers, fatty liver, I'll talk about Alzheimer's. If you're from the Valley, you either know somebody who has Alzheimer's or dementia, or you know somebody within your family that does. If you look at a heat map for South Texas and along the border, it just lights up because there's so much here. We're here to look at why that is. Of course, it's genetic, right? We know that there's probably something that connects you to that. But we also know that there's environmental factors. And so our group of researchers, which I'll talk about in a second, are here looking at those kind of things. Here's the thing that just continues to dismay me. And it's a pillar of why we're here. It's a complex graph. I'll just make it simple for you. PSA stands for primary service area. When we look at physicians per capita, when you look at Texas, this tells a story. When you look at all specialties, Texas is 47th out of 50 for physicians per capita. Let me say that again, 47th out of 50. That's the bottom 47. Now look up at the graph and see where the green is. There's a ton of physicians in Houston. There's a lot of physicians in Dallas, too many physicians in Dallas, San Antonio. Now look over to the right, what you see is Austin, and you see us on the left there. We're in the red in almost every specialty. And then when you look at, if you were able to cross-reference this to those aging out physicians here in the Rio Grande Valley, we're in trouble. If we don't produce enough physicians in the next 5, 10, 15 years, there's not going to be physicians to take care of patients here. The medical school effect, I think, is, and I'm going to write this up, when you look at Austin and our school were started at the same time. You look at Austin as behind the curve as well for physicians per capita, but I think you'll quickly see that change as their medical school and our medical school. And I hope, I should have told you this, by the way, I've reached my almost 4-year anniversary. The average dean tenure is, does anybody know? 3 years. So I told Dr. Bailey, I said, I'm done. I reached my 3-year mark. I don't know if I'll be here in the next 10, 15 years, but I'm going to be smiling somewhere and say, hey, our numbers are in the green and we have enough physicians to take care of our patients. I don't think people understand what it takes to be a doctor. I was trying to explain this to my 15-year-old, and that's probably why he doesn't want to go into medicine. One, you got to be a really smart high school student to get into a good undergraduate program. And then you spend 4 years, although I'll share some other stories now as we're seeing people with early collegiate high credits, they're coming into undergraduate programs. But typically you spend somewhere between 3 to 4 years as an undergraduate. And then you get the pleasure of taking the MCAT, which is the entrance exam into medical school. And if you don't have at least a 3.8 GPA, 3.8, you might as well not even look at medical school. So you better have pretty much all A's, occasional B, probably no C's or D's. And then you go into medical school. Let me tell you some numbers there. For the last 3 years running, we have 55 slots a year. We have over 6,000 applications for those 55 slots. It's hard to get in. The best and brightest are the only ones getting in. We need to increase that number, obviously. So you spend the first 2 years in what we call preclinical years. We actually start getting our students involved with patients early, so they start seeing patients their first year. They don't know nothing about nothing, but we get them in. We supervise them, of course, and they take care of you. But we get them on the bedside very quickly. And then you spend your last 3rd and 4th year in rotations, typically in clinics or hospitals. We currently partner with every hospital, with the exception of one here in the Rio Grande Valley, and our students are at every one of those facilities. So you'd think, great, you made it through medical school, right? You were one of those lucky 1 out of 6,000, rigorous 4 years, not a lot of time off. I always joke because people say, oh, you're a faculty, that means you get the whole summer off. I said, no, we're physicians. We work 12 months out of the year, 365 days, especially as an emergency physician. Then you go on to what we call, I call chisel your foundation or on-the-job training. So you do a Could be anywhere from 3 to 7 year training program as a resident and fellow. So you're a practicing physician, but you're still in training. So if you wanted to do neurosurgery, think about the time you'd have to spend. 7 years plus probably 2 to 3 research years. So you're going to be in your mid to late 30s, perhaps in your early 40s when you actually start practicing independently. So hopefully that clarifies what we do. I wanted to share a little bit about our School of Medicine. We were started in 2015. We took our first class in 2016. I also wanted to mention podiatry. I don't think a lot of people understand that. We started a podiatry school 2 years ago. We now have 2 classes. It's an essential service for the Rio Grande Valley when we look at diabetes rates and the amount of ulcers, foot infections, amputations. For people who don't understand this, the amputation rate is about 100 times higher here in the Rio Grande Valley than other places in the country. So that was really important. I'll talk about our 25 clinics. We have 25 clinics across the Rio Grande Valley. Again, I love when the president talks about, we're not UT McAllen, we're not UT Edinburgh, we're not UT this. We are the UT Rio Grande Valley. So when you look at our campuses, both on the academics but also on the medical side, we really bridge the gap all the way from Starr County over to Brownsville. I want to share a couple stories, and up on the slide it says, we've had a 100% match rate. Well, what does that mean? When you're a 4th-year student, you select what specialty you're going to go into. You go visit the programs, and then you rank them, 1 through whatever you want to rank, and then the programs rank you. It's one of the worst processes you could ever go through as a student because you're at the mercy of whether they like you. I'm more of a person, hey, I like you, shake my hand, let's make it happen, move on. But our students go through that every year. I'm going to tell you a story about a couple people that recently matched from programs that are from the Rio Grande Valley. 2 years ago, we had 2 students from the Rio Grande Valley who matched at Mass General, Harvard for internal medicine. #1 internal medicine program in the United States came out of our medical school. The last couple years, we've had people go to Stanford, Duke, Emory, some of the best training programs in the U.S. Now, my job is to, 1, let them go do that training, and then we got to recruit them back to the Rio Grande Valley. We also got to keep the ones here that are training here. I think I have another slide that shows it, but it's pretty well known that if you start practicing as a resident or fellow, you're going to likely end up staying in that area because 1, you buy a house, 2, you start having a family, 3, you get used to the hospital and the infrastructure and you like the community. So about 60% of residents will stay where they train. And that's true for our residents that have stayed here. About 60% have stayed. Next slide. This is, again, that footprint of what our clinics look like. I'm going to move on, talk about something that's really near and dear to us. As a state school, we have to take 90% of our students have to be from Texas. We're usually right about 93, 94% of our students come from Texas, and these are some of the best and brightest. Here's something I'm really proud of. Can you go to the next slide? Look at these numbers. 46% of our class now is from the Rio Grande Valley, South Texas. These are the kids who previously left. And I apologize, I keep saying kids. At graduation last year, I was sitting there next to one of my senior associate deans, and I said something like, wow, they just keep getting younger. And he just looked at me and said, no, we're getting older. He was right. I also think it's interesting when you look at the dynamics of our class. When I looked at the University of Colorado, and every school puts up their class picture, it wasn't until really in the 1970s that we started seeing women in the medical school. Now look at our medical school composition. The majority of them are women. It's good for medicine. I would show you the minority numbers and the diversity, which I think is really special to our school, but the state doesn't allow me to do that, and I like my job, so. But we have one of the most diverse medical schools in the country, and I'm so proud of that. So how do we get 47% of our students? I think you used the term build it and they will come. Well, we built our medical school and they're coming, right? 6,000 of them are applying every year. We have done some really innovative things to encourage really bright students to stay here. Because if we know we get them to stay here for their education, they're going to stay. And so we created this thing called Vaqueros MD. I call it the golden ticket. It's like the Willy Wonka golden ticket. So if you're one of the best high school students, specifically from the 13th southernmost counties in Texas, and you apply, it's really competitive, we will give you admission into our medical school right out of high school. Our only ask is that you come and participate in our honors program at UTRGV because we need you to be ready for medical school, and you have to pass a minimum requirement for the MCAT. So this last year, we had 18 Vaqueros MD. We started out with 8. We continue to grow that program every year. This year, we just took our first Vaqueros MD who came through our undergraduate program into our medical school. But these are the best and brightest in South Texas who typically would likely go to a Baylor, to a UT Southwestern, or they would look out of state to look at a different program, but we're keeping them here. I also want to highlight one other program, which is called the Luminary Program. We were fortunate as a university to receive really just an out-of-the-blue gift. Somebody was interested in giving to a Hispanic-serving institution, so we got almost a $40 million grant. Dr. Bailey and the VPs got together and said, what do we want to do with that grant? It was unrestricted. We could have done whatever we wanted. We could have built a building. We could have done this. We could have done that, started a different program. We said, we need to help students of South Texas. Students of South Texas don't have the means of many other students. Most of them are first-generation students. Most of them have families that don't make enough money to send them to, universities. And so we developed this program called the Luminary Scholarship. First of all, you have to be from Texas. We preferentially trying to get kids from South Texas, very competitive. And what the program does is it says, if you come here and you qualify and you make it as one of the finalists in this program, we're going to pay for 4 years of your undergraduate degree. So you get 4 years, tuition, fees, housing, free. It gets better. It gets better. If you're interested in going in, getting a PhD, a doctoral degree, an MD, a podiatry degree, we'll also pay for 4 years of that, tuition and fees. Now, we don't pay the housing, but can you imagine that? You get an undergraduate degree, you can come to medical school, you'll have no debt when you come out. So we started the program 2 years ago. We have now, in the first class, I think 6 luminaries who also happen to be Vaqueros MD. And then this last year, we have another 5 luminary scholars. So we have these kids who will be coming through without any debt. Next slide. Let's talk about affordability. On the general, are you able to afford? Okay. UTRGV has one of the lowest tuitions throughout the state. And when you look at the total student debt for UTRGV for our undergraduate, it's unbelievable. And if you or your family makes less than 120, I think, or maybe 125,000 now, through Pell Grants and other funding, you actually get your degree paid for without any debt. We have to do the same thing in medicine, and now you'll see that number. I can't really see what it says, 20,000 or 21,532. That sounds like a lot. Do you know what it is to go to a private medical school? Anybody have any idea? $60,000 to $80,000 1 year. When you look at the average student debt for somebody coming out of medical school, it ranges, it's almost like a house payment, $250,000 to $300,000. So if you have to go get a house payment and then you're still paying on your student debt, now the interest rate's probably better on your student loan than your house payment right now. But the good news is for our students, most of them are coming out with half of that debt, under $90,000, and that's really important to us because those kids that come here need those opportunities without being burdened with student debt. I want to share a video with you of one of our students, and obviously we have his permission to share this. This is a kid from South Texas. This is a bright kid, and this is the future of medicine here in the Rio Grande Valley. Go ahead and play it, and then I'll tell you.
Over the next 10 years, with the amount of physicians that are not only coming out of the UTRGV School of Medicine, but also the amount of physicians that UTRGV is finding, these high-quality PhDs, MDs, and they're bringing them to the Valley to give back to our community. The research that's also being done is very impactful and very promising, and I think that we're going to see some major advances within how healthcare is provided within the Valley.
So Jake is special. He's like the Doogie Howser, if anybody ever remember that show. My kids wouldn't have any idea what I'm talking about. So Jake got 2 years of college credit in high school. He made it through in just under a year and a half through undergraduate. He shows up in medical school 19. 19. That's good and bad. At 19, you're not as mature as you need to be probably a physician, but he's special. But we're going to see more and more of these kind of students. The other programs that we're looking at are innovative programs called 3+ programs. I was part of developing them at my prior institution, where we really look at residency and say, how do we get you through medical school faster so we can get you in your specialty, so we can get you seeing patients as a physician sooner? So if we can take this kind of kid and then also streamline his medical education, in 3 years, within a pipeline of 5 to 6 years, we can be producing physicians that get into residency. And so that's what we're going to be doing here at UTRGV School of Medicine. Next slide. So this is the number of residents that we've graduated to date, 408 in multiple different specialties. Here again is that number. 60% of those ones who have trained with us are staying here in Texas, and many are staying in the Rio Grande Valley. Next slide.
My journey through medical school has been challenging, but in all the good ways. Some of the most valuable skills or knowledge that I've gained during my time here is all of the foundational medicine stuff. We've had some of the best professors. We have great pharmacology professors, and I felt really prepared when it was time to take our exams. This school has given me that kind of confidence through the rigorous training that they give us through the first 2 years and now in clerkship. So I got to start off with OB-GYN, and having to deliver my first baby was awesome. I remember being confronted with a young girl who had found out she was pregnant, didn't speak the language, was new to this country, was very scared. And I was able to connect with her as somebody who's gone through that before. And the next week later, she went into labor, and I helped deliver that baby. I've loved my experience in clinical rotations. It's true that everybody says the first 2 years of medicine, the book work and the studying, it is hard, but when you get to third year and you can actually apply it, it's amazing. Having to measure fetal heart tones and see the joy in people's face. I, as a woman and mother, I have a special connection to that. So it was really nice to be able to connect with my patients in that way and give them the best healthcare that I knew how. And I enjoy seeing myself grow week after week and getting better in my rotation. It's one of the most beautiful and special things about this school. It's that little thing that you need to keep reminding you why you do the hours of studying that you do. And the school does a really good job at exposing us to those kinds of opportunities and slowly become the doctor that you saw yourself being. It's no more this imposter syndrome. You're becoming that person that you always dreamed to be.
All right, I don't think I have any more videos, but this girl's special. She's also from South Texas. Single mother, going through medical school. Bright, she's the president of our student group. She's going to be somebody someday. She's already somebody, but that's unique to us. And again, it's not about our school, it's about the people that are within our program. I briefly want to go through research because I don't think, if you live in the Rio Grande Valley, how many people know what research we're doing? Anybody? A couple people. I'm going to change that today. You're going to go away from here and you're going to say, wow, I had no idea you were doing that. Next slide. First of all, when you look at, I just want to throw some accolades to President Bailey and what we're doing. We just reached status for Emerging Research University. And that requires expenditures of around $40 million in research. And it also requires so many PhDs. So we just achieved that, and we should get recognition for that soon, which means we get more. It's not just the recognition, but it actually gives you access to additional state dollars that you can do then more research with. So that's really important. President Bailey has set a goal of reaching R1 status. And just to clarify, within the state right now, there's 16 Tier 1 institutions. And within 2030, we plan to be a Tier 1 institution. And we are on track to do that. So, next slide. I wish I had a time to tell you all the great programs we're doing. Here's just some things that we're doing or that we've gotten funded recently. So our School of Medicine alone makes up about 60% of the research expenditures at the university. And last year, we had $75.6 million in total awards in research. The money isn't important. What we're doing is important. So I want to share with you a couple of different things that we're doing. So next slide. So for those of you who don't know, in Brownsville, we have probably a world-renowned group of genetic researchers who today have more computing capacity with the computers we have down there. We don't like to publicize that because we don't want anybody to hack it, so don't share it. But it's under guard. But we have capabilities to do things there that other people in the country can't do, and you don't even know that's in your backyard. This group today can analyze your DNA in 4 hours. Let me say that again. I can take a blood sample from you and analyze your DNA in 4 hours. Do you know how long it took to sequence the genome, the human genome? Anybody? Anybody want to guess? Almost 20 years and $1 billion. Today, I can take your blood sample down there for $400 in 4 hours. I can tell you what your genetic sequencing is. Now the question is, what do we do with that? We combine that to understand what genetic component your disease or your family lineage produces in your disease pattern. Why do we have so much diabetes here? I think diabetes is rampant. It's epidemic rates in South Texas and along the border. So we're studying that to understand, is it genetics? Yes, of course it's genetics. 2, is it environmental? Absolutely it's environmental, whatever we're eating. When we look at cancers, we want to know. So we study genetics and understanding of what comes from your parents, but we also look at proteomics, which is the study of environmental factors. So now we can take your genes and say, hey, this is what caused it from your parents. This is what's coming from the environment. Especially for cancers, that's important because there's something here exposing people to GI cancers that's different than other places in the country. I share that story because that's what we are doing here. We're not studying some esoteric disease that doesn't have anything to do with the Rio Grande Valley. We're studying things that are important in changing the disease patterns in the lives of people here in Rio Grande Valley. I can say the same thing I think there's another slide. If not, I may have passed over it, but we currently have centers of excellence doing research in cancer research. We have another group that we have the only Alzheimer's disease research center that we work collaboratively with University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio, where we're looking at Alzheimer's and what's going on there. We just recruited the first neurologist in the Rio Grande Valley that actually takes care of, he's a neurologist that specializes in memory disorders. So not only can we look at what's happening on a research component, but we can actually start to care for patients with Alzheimer's, look at new innovative drugs. We also have our Diabetes and Obesity Institute looking at that. We just received another $30 million grant from the Valley Baptist Legacy Foundation to start a diabetes center of excellence. Long overdue in the Valley, where we can really study what's happening with diabetes. We can start changing the disease patterns for diabetes. And if anybody, almost everybody here in the audience probably has somebody in their family with diabetes here. About 2/3 of the population either has prediabetes or diabetes. And the sequelae of diabetes and what happens is just, it's life-changing. So you get a stroke, you have a heart attack, you get kidney failure, you lose a limb. We have to change that, and that's what we're here to do. Next slide. I'm going to skip over this. I think we're doing lots of things for the community. This is Dr. Deepu George, who does some just incredible things in wellness. Not just wellness for our students and residents, but for also our faculty and for the community. And he started a program where we'll see patients now for their primary care visit, but we'll also offer what we call holistic care, where we're going to talk to you about what other stressors in your life are causing problems. And he's done some innovative programs and developing an app, which will probably be used by not just people here in the Rio Grande Valley, but throughout the country.
UTRGV School of Medicine getting ready to launch a new app that...
Yeah, I'm going to skip over that one. I did want to talk about service. Again, unless you've been somewhere where you've seen this, you wouldn't even know this is going on. So in the slide up there, we have a student-run clinic. Every month, our students go out and for free see patients. We use some financial donations through private donations to help fund that. The clinic is given to us. I was there, I guess, a couple Saturdays ago. We had 40 students show up, 40 students to take care of patients. They want to see patients. Almost every patient we saw that morning had diabetes. Almost every patient had no insurance. Almost every patient needed medications. Now, we were fortunate to be at a clinic where there was at least some medications that were available, but then they get to see the dilemma of what do you do with a patient who has diabetes, who needs diabetes control, but also has hypertension and other problems, who can't afford medications. And those are real life challenges, but our students are out there seeing those patients for free. We also run the Unimobile, so we have select colonias that we visit on a regular basis, because what we found is a lot of the people in the colonias, that's not who you're selling houses to, right? But they have needs. They don't go see the doctor. They don't have health insurance. Many of them don't have cars. So we said, we're going to come to you. And every time we show up, there's a line of people just wanting to be seen. We started doing pap smears for any woman that shows up there. We'll offer you a pap smear because we know they're not going to get to the doctor to get that pap smear. We also participate in Operation Border Health. So we take a group of students and faculty every year to help in any way we can with border health. I'm going to go to the next slide. I don't want to bore you with the details of some of what we're doing in clinical care. I don't think it would surprise you that we've talked about education service. We obviously have a group of both primary care and specialty physicians. Almost all of these are people either who have gone away and got training or we've recruited. As we continue to grow, we'll have now our own specialists that we're growing here. But we represent many specialties, and many of these folks have been at prestigious places and been willing to come to the Rio Grande Valley. I wanted to spend a little time on our Cancer and Surgery Center. When I first got here, we were looking at how can we help the Rio Grande Valley in clinical care. Of course, we can just bring doctors into clinics and see people, but what we saw in cancer was just appalling, to be honest with you. As somebody who grew up in big cities and lived in places where all the resources were always there, I was mortified to see that about 60% of our patients in the Rio Grande Valley have got a cancer diagnosis. We're leaving the Rio Grande Valley to go get their cancer care. As soon as they get that diagnosis, and many of you, every one of us probably can raise our hands and say we've had a loved one afflicted by cancer. But you shouldn't have to fight cancer. Cancer sucks. You should be at home getting that cancer taken care of. So when we looked at those numbers and looked at the types of cancers here, we just said, we have to change this. We're going to change this on a research front. We're going to train the next generation of physicians who are going to take care of cancer patients, and we're going to take care of these people right here. So we bought some land. Land prices were okay a couple years ago. Although we have one piece of property that is getting more and more expensive right near it. Look at the construction cost. I don't know if you can see that number. So this is a 150,000 square foot building. The cost to build is about $150,000. Who else builds at $1,000 per square foot? Only in healthcare. If you look at a hospital, it's $2.5 million per bed. That might be the more expensive option. This is going to be a full-service cancer center. We partnered with MD Anderson as an advisory role. And we're going to see patients. We can diagnose them, we can treat them. We're going to have chemotherapy, radiation, full service outpatient treatment, as well as surgical center to help support that. We'll also have PT, OT. For those of you who don't know, we're going to be starting a school of physical therapy next year. We already have a school of occupational therapy. We are waiting for coordinating board approval to start a school of optometry, which we hope to have stood up in 2 years. And this is where we'll take care of a lot of those patients. So again, I'm excited here in August, sometime between May and August. Building is challenging in healthcare, just like it is everywhere else. We hope to open that facility early this spring and start to see our own patients. I want to tell you this story also about cancer patients in the Rio Grande Valley. I told you this story, if you have insurance, what you do. You leave. What happens to the patient who doesn't have insurance? They show up at the hospital, the clinics that do cancer care now. They're not getting care. They're going to go home and die with their cancer. We have to change that. We have to change that as a community, and at UTRGV, we're vested to make sure that that happens. That's why recently we were up talking with state, the legislators and the senators, telling them that we're building this, but we also need operational funds, because I don't want to turn away a single patient that has cancer that needs to be taken care of. But we need the state's support to make sure that that can happen here. One thing that doesn't exist in the Rio Grande Valley is something that, again, I wasn't part of this, and I don't understand it, but we don't have a hospital district. There's no safety net hospital here. There's no teaching hospital. And as a dean without a hospital, it's hard to do what we're doing. And so I just ask you the next time, if that's ever considered again, that you consider supporting that for the people of the Rio Grande Valley. Of course, I learned this quickly when I got here. If you talk about one region, you better talk about another, otherwise they get upset. But we, again, are UTRGV. We have some really incredible things happen in Harlingen. We have our Institute of Neurosciences, where we have our Alzheimer's disease research center, where we're doing research. We have an active group of neurologists, both pediatric neurologists, adult neurologists. I mentioned our memory disorder specialist. I mentioned the Diabetes Center of Excellence in Limb Preservation, which we'll be putting there, and I hope to have operational within the next year, although the new facility will probably take 2 to 3 years to happen. And then I talked about our School of Physical Therapy. I want to leave you with just a couple of thoughts. I shared a lot about our school. Hopefully you walk away today saying, hey, they're not just producing medical students, they're really changing lives in South Texas. We still got a lot to do. We need to increase our class size so we can produce more physicians. I showed you the need for that. We need more GME training programs. We need to continue to work with our hospital partners to grow those programs and work as a unified body. There's lots of opportunities to grow, and we need to continue to look at what our patient needs are in the Rio Grande Valley. Byron, again, today I thank you for the opportunity. I'm always humbled, and it's such a pleasure to talk about an institution that's doing so many great things, and we have so many faculty. I appreciate the UTRGV folks here. And we need your help as people who, as we recruit in folks, you are going to be some of the first people that they meet when they get here. And how you sell them on the Rio Grande Valley, find them their home, find them the schools for their children, what you do is so essential to what we do. And I look forward to partnering with you in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hocker. There are just so many stories. One thing I admire about Dr. Hocker is how soft-spoken he is. And if you don't know him and haven't had a chance to visit with him, you see the fire and the passion come through and how much he cares about the students, the medical school, and our community. He also has an innovative management approach. Ask him about it. One reason physicians want to come here is it's not a normal siloed medical school. It works across research and actual public-facing practice. So it's a remarkable thing. Right here in our own neighborhood, there's a machine at the cancer center, this huge thing, and there are only like 5 in the whole country. I don't even know what it is. What is it, Dr. Hock?
Well, we have a special linear accelerator, and really, when I look at that and the technology, we visited with some folks, but again, that technology, the RGV is deserving of that. You shouldn't have to go to Houston. You shouldn't have to go to Boston to get that kind of care, and that's what we're doing here. By the way, it took, I think, for those builders in the room, I think 6 feet of concrete below on the sides, the ceiling, and it has to be all enclosed. So.
That's just one of the many things. So please visit with Dean Hocker when you can. Support the university when you can.